And a new housing report paints a picture of greedy landlords exploiting tenants with inflated prices, adding to a housing affordability crisis in Central Otago. The Southern District Health Board report is based on 25 interviews with 18 different agencies, including the Ministry of Social Development, Oranga Tamariki, and local schools. It found booming migration is putting the squeeze on housing in the area, increasing inequality and decreasing the availability of quality housing. And according to some of those interviewed, that lack of availability is creating a power imbalance that some landlords are taking full advantage of. I asked Southern DHB's Medical Director, Dr Hywel Lloyd, to describe the conditions some people are living in Central Otago.
There was two distinct cohorts, one that had really poor housing. So, lack of heating, extremely cold properties. There were mouldy, broken windows, cracked basins, and some without any power at all. And the other aspect of this then is when people struggle to afford the repayments for the mortgage because of the high mortgage repayments and the rent costs. What we see is that people start to suffer and start to pull back on the other amenities of living, and that came through in a number of ways. A lot of the people there were actually having overcrowding issues because they couldn't afford the property and the rent. So we had a lot of issues that we discovered through overcrowding and large families living together and having other people coming in to rent the property with you.
And it sounds like, sorry to interrupt, in terms of the survey, there was a significant number of people, it seems, who aren't even living in houses. Can you tell me about them?
Yeah, so you get when you have a boomtown, you get this displacement effect whereby you get a cohort of people who move down the housing ladder. And right at the bottom end of that is you have families and single-parent families living in campgrounds. We had stories of people living in tents with young children, living in camper vans within campgrounds. And, we all know that Central Otago during the winter months is a pretty harsh environment to be living in that kind of accommodation.
Were you surprised by any of this?
Look, I think for a lot of people, this will be really quite confronting. That when you travel through Central Otago and the Queenstown area, it is such a beautiful place, and there are such beautiful properties that you see, and then there's this kind of underbelly of suffering. And I think it is surprising to the people on the ground who do this kind of work and see these families every day. Clearly, it's not surprising, and that's what really triggered this research. We wanted to get an understanding of what that was like.
So one of the two main issues in a nutshell that you identified were availability and affordability. I'm interested in what the organisations you interviewed, what they had to say about the role of landlords and property managers in all of this. What comments came out?
Look, well, we tried to get a broad perspective of people interested in this area and who had concerns. Unfortunately, we didn't get any response. We invited the property managers to contribute to the piece of research, but unfortunately we didn't get a response for them, so we can't really get their perspective on it.
But what did people say about the role they are playing in the housing crisis, the ones that you did interview?
Clearly, what the model that we've got really is sort of like a profit-driven kind of housing model. So house prices are going up, rents are going up. Because when there's lack of availability, then you can increase the rent, and you'll always have another person wanting to come and use that property. So that creates this cycle of lack of investment, lack of upkeep in that property. And you get this fear happening with the tenants that they don't really want to complain, they don't want to really raise issues because they're very fearful that, one, they might be evicted or the rent might actually go up and they'll be forced out.
How would you characterise the behaviours of landlords from what you've seen in this report?
Look, I don't really want to comment on that. I think one of the things that we've got to do going forward from this report is look at the findings, accept that, and then work collaboratively together to try and solve some of these problems for these very needy people.
Okay, let me put it another way.
I just think that finger pointing in this situation probably doesn't help. We really need to all work together to try and improve the housing stock and the quality of that housing stock for these people.
Under the section Power Imbalance and Landlord Behaviour in this report, these are some of the following comments that were made. This person says of landlords, they call it market value, I call it exploitation. Another comment, it's massive profiteering. The report goes on to say that availability via landlord price setting behaviour has created an affordability crisis in Central Otago. Landlords are described as the winners, as being very greedy and exhibiting a flippant and just don't care attitude. Is that a fair characterisation of the behaviour of landlords that you're seeing in this area?
Look, I think it is very hard to ignore those words of the people living in these properties.
So what do you do about it?
Yeah, look, I think that's the difficult thing. Look, I don't think any one agency can really solve this problem, and that's where we come into this collaborative model of how do we all work together in this area to try and improve the housing stock and the quality.
But how can you work together with them when they won't even answer a survey?
So I think there's other housing provisions that we can think about. We can think about community housing. We can think about how does the district council look at it, trying to improve the numbers of social housing that is available. How can we improve the access to insulation and repairing of some of these properties? There's a whole heap of things that we can put in place to try and redress this.
Isn't approaching the landlords and property managers potentially offering you a more immediate solution? Are you going to make any attempts to open up some conversations with them about their behaviour?
Look, I think we're always open to discussions to see how we can try and improve the situation. Look, that's what we're hoping with the report, really, that we're really shining a light on that aspect of the housing market. And let's hope that they come to the party and help be part of the solution.
Is hope all you've got then when it comes to them?
Look, it's very hard to move them. They're independent people. We can legislate at various levels.
Is there a need? Is there a need for additional legislation around some of these behaviours then?
Look, we talk about that in some of the recommendations that we make from the report, and I think there is area for scope for some changes in the legislative framework there. Yes.
And that's Southern DHB's Medical Director, Dr Hywel Lloyd.